So open up to questions. Anybody want to ask anything of Melanie or the panel? Please feel free. Or observations on how what we've talked about has come across. We've just got till 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Got a quick question. I'm Catherine Becker at Connection. First of all, I thought that was really inspiring, and I think it's absolutely right. We challenge what we're doing and into the future. You talked a lot about consulting with CMOs on this project and finding their views. Did you already think about having a look wider, because there's people like, obviously, the procurement teams, the finance directors are having an influence, and increasingly we're finding on some clients like venture capitalists are having a big influence on how they brief things out, how creative they do, and ask that wider group of people.
Well, what might be quite interesting is Melanie to address that, but also the panel to say the title of the people they work with.
Yeah.
Because that would be quite interesting too, to see whether we are moving outside of the marketing domain alone. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk to any procurement people, that's for sure. We heard a lot about them, as one always does. And I think that still is a challenge. And I've been involved in other conversations, which really, and I have a very interesting view that the CMOs are going to be the CEOs for the future, because that would be great. But part of that then is for CMOs to be really empowered and become more part of the sort of engine of growth for their organisations, not just about communicating brands. So I think it's all part of the same thing, that the CMOs that we were working with in the network are there trying to up their game so that they become more influential and less subject to the controls of procurement and some of the other teams.
What about the titles of the people that you take your lead from? Any observations beyond marketing?
It very much is marketing, but increasingly the CEO will be involved, and also heads of talent and HR. As we look to establish platforms and positionings for brands that aren't just marketing communications, but impact the business as a whole, we are working more with what would be, I guess, a human resources function to roll that platform out internally rather than just externally to the outside world.
What about you, Sarah?
Often CEOs, because what they want to achieve is digital transformation, and that doesn't just sit in the marketing team.
It varies massively depending on the size of the company. Often CEO or Chief Product Officer, Chief Digital Officer, Head of Innovation. If it's a much bigger business, it might be an MD. It's often people that own a P&L or are responsible and driving growth in that over the next 12 to 18 months, or someone that's thinking about their next product or business line to drive growth after that.
Well, they were called marketing directors in my day when I ran an agency, but from doing a lot of the client surveys, we do a lot of client surveys with my clients, and generally it's either CEO or CMO.
No CTO or CIO?
Not a lot.
No?
Not a lot.
They're usually, they play a big role in our projects.
Right.
We have worked for one previously, but more they're kind of a collaborator. Right. So it'd be like, here's our technology stack, here's how we build technology here, and that type of conversation.
Do you know what, that surprises me, and I agree. Now you say it, I'm like, yes, that's absolutely right. Often the CTO will get brought in once decisions have been made.
Yeah. The power's definitely back with the marketing.
But they don't necessarily hold the decision making.
Yeah. A lot of the new marketing tools are actually back with the marketing department now, rather than being the realm of the CTO and IT.
Matt.
Hello, I'm Matt Pye from Chale. Just to pick up on that point, I think it's interesting where there's technology and ideas as well, because I think if the future CMOs become CEOs, the reason they get there is because they have transformational business ideas that are born out of marketing, and technology is often an enabler around that. But without the idea, and I think given we sit in the IPA building and just after Cannes, so it's fantastic that Ice Bucket Challenge has won. It's an idea. That didn't come from an agency, that came from somebody with a great idea. And some of the best, most transformational ideas are the reasons why clients will spend a lot of money, be that on an agency or be that consultancy or be that a person around the corner who happens to have a stroke of genius. And I think I saw John Hegarty and Richard Curtis last week in Cannes, and Hegarty talked about how technology isn't moving consumers, ideas still move consumers. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of that as what we provide as well. Now, I think technology incredibly enabling, but without the idea, it's an empty vessel. Now, there's some businesses that are built on technology brilliantly well without really much of an idea behind it. But the vast majority of brands going forward, I still think need an idea to fuel it. And I think it's interesting, this is about the future of agencies. If we don't provide ideas, somebody out there will be, and we're all doomed, basically. So, and that comes back to the talent point. So who are the best placed people? And often they're not coming out of traditional places where agencies would have shopped around for talent. So I love the fact that it's people who, did you bring your own or bake, if somebody said made at home or whatever, it might take a bit more time. But I love that, you know, I've got a 16-year-old on a placement this week, bloody genius. She's only been in the office 8 hours. So I'm going to try and persuade her not to go to university, which will probably ruin her mum and dad's ambition for her. But I think my point is ideas are going to move brands, and people who connect to those ideas are the ones who are going to be successful, whether they're agency or clients. So, my point.
Great. Mark, you have another point of view.
I think it's very interesting when you think of tech companies, it's the other way around. The CEO becomes the CMO. So if you think of tech companies, they get what they are and they live the brand. So startups have always got their brand because that's what they've arrived, because they're disruptors, therefore they're fine. So I think actually it could go the other way. So I think the best CEOs are also the CMO. And I think that's the gap that's got. In relation to where ideas, I don't really care, but increasingly it's a platform, it's a solution to a consumer problem, and it could come from anywhere. And I think it's very naive. I think it's the biggest danger that there's this creative inspiration that sits in a place. It goes back to the collaboration. In most tech companies, it's 5 or 6 people working together, and the answer could be, we'll change the platform, or the answer could be, we do this outside. And that's the key thing, which I think is the biggest issue that exists, because most of the advertising industry is large corporate organisations, sorry to say, called an Omnicom or a WPP. And I really don't see how they're going to adapt to this collaborative world, which is, you know, eating, let's quote Martin Sorrell last week, we need to eat our own children. I really struggle to see how the major funders of the industry are going to adapt, which I think, because they've got to destroy their model, which I think is very difficult to do commercially, certainly when you've got a quarterly P&L to report into. So I think it's very hard. I think that it's absolutely right, but I think it's turkeys voting for Christmas at the moment. I think that's a very hard thing for the large corporations to do.
So does anybody have any answer to that? I can certainly bring in something that we discussed a lot during the ADAPT agenda. How do you change the pattern of big clients and big agencies? And our going in position was to adopt the Coca-Cola Jonathan Mildenhall model, which was to say 70% of what we do we'll carry on doing as normal, and 20% of what we'll do we divide up into really risky 10% and 20% amplifying and changing what we do, and we'll do it progressively like that. And we need to have an agreement that that's what we're going to do, and then over time we'll get better at it. Because we do need, I mean, part of the reason for doing this research is we've got to have an industry approach to getting us to the next stage. We've got to create a framework which actually creates the conversations which make this sort of change possible. Otherwise, we'll just get left behind. And that's what you're talking about, I think.
Could I pick up on that? I think it's quite interesting. So the 70-20-10 thing's interesting. I think how you actually execute it is really hard. So there's also this Horizon model, so Horizon 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Horizon 3 is uncharted territory, so it's the 10% stuff. And the types of people that are doing that and the way you enable them to do that's really important. So we've actually just finished a book called Bye Bye Banks, and there's a lot of banking disruption at the moment, and so that's what the books we're talking about. And we spoke to probably 15 senior executives at large financial services companies and surveyed about 110 more. And 3 topics came up all the time, which was people, culture, and technology. Now, there are brilliant people within these organizations, very smart people. But if you're the MD and you have a P&L, which is actually still quite profitable, why would you possibly change that for a new model? And also, what are the constraints and the culture and the technology limitations that mean doing different things to how you've always done them? Businesses become successful because they execute the same thing repeatedly. And when you're trying something new, it doesn't quite mesh with that. So there's loads of conversation in the agency world about becoming a product company and launching your own products. We've tried to do that, and it's really bloody hard. And we're very good at doing it. We can build products very well. You have to take a slightly different approach, I think. So get your people out of the organisation and go and do it somewhere else. Because more often than not, you'll put the shining lights in charge of this thing, and they'll get pulled in 1,000,001 ways because the new client opportunity comes in and all of a sudden they've got to go back and work on it, when really you want them to go and sort of be the fire starter of this new germ of whatever it might be that you're trying to do.
Any other suggestions from the audience for our closing remarks? Did I have a hand up there? No? No. Just a pen. Yes, thank you.
I can't help but agree with your perspective, even though it obviously pains me to do it, sitting in an agency group and heading up an agency. The theory that I keep mulling over is that it's not that this industry will die, it's just that what we've not yet woken up to in 10 years' time, it won't be we're all still sitting here at the IPA talking about it, it probably will look radically different. And I think it kind of needs to be half the size that it is now, because I think we are too fat, too slow, and definitely need to adapt to change. And I think it's not about one being right and one being wrong. I think it's about a healthy blend of it all. So I think the best answer that's been delivered by the panel this evening is about that great minds coming together, the proper collaborative spirit, and how brands and agencies find a way of working better in that middle point. And it seems to me that that's something that we all need to focus on. Commercial models to underpin it, because that is the biggest thing that constrains us, in that the P&L that we're asked to work to as an agency is not the P&L that supports that type of collaborative working. So we've got to wake up and we've got to make that change. But I think that middle ground there, and the thought that we come together in whichever the 4 boxes we occupy, whichever one is supreme or not, or they're all existing together, it feels like that's the point that we have to do. And I think we have to wake up to the fact that there's just too many of us all doing the same thing, and our market isn't big enough for us, certainly not in the UK. So we either have to shift some people out, we have to adapt very quickly, but it feels like it's going to be radically different in 10 years' time.
And to be optimistic about this as our final note, what we would like to offer is a sort of industry-wide initiative to allow that to continue, so that it doesn't get, stamped upon within a corporate environment. And one of the pleas coming out of the strategy workshops was actually, we need more days like this when we can all collaborate together to get to this optimistic place and not be hidebound by what we can do within our own agency, so that we have a powerful voice to drive change. And we are looking to create a budget to help us do this, getting some support from an organisation called Innovate UK, which will put a few millions on the table to really give us some power to get this sort of project going. And if we don't do it, I don't think we'll have to blame ourselves.
Well, that's what we look to the IPA for, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can help pull us forward.
Yeah.
Because to run and survive in the day-to-day at the moment, it takes a lot of our time, and we need bodies like the IPA to sit there as a bit of a beacon and show us where could we be going and how could that look, and that's exactly what.
So the technology agenda and the commercial agenda are both being pushed that way to actually help us develop this new way of looking at business. So hopefully that will help, because we're not going to give up. So any last thoughts from the panel?
Do you want our final, do we feel optimistic?
Yes.
I feel optimistic about the future, and I think that's because from throughout the day, it was wonderful to have so many different people from different agencies putting our heads together to fix ourselves rather than fix our client's business. So to actually put our great minds to that, but also just because I think collaboration is the key to success in any one of those quadrants. And a particular passion point of the IPA strategy unit team is on the sustainability agenda. So we're going to be running a project where we're going to be asking in different agencies to all come together and for us to work as united front to find a way to do some good there and actually affect change with our brands, with our individual agencies, and to do it without the kind of silos of group networks or independent agencies, and lean on each other a wee bit more. So I think that's a bright future.
Thank you. And the other 3 panelists are not in the IPA membership, but do tell us your views give us some advice.
Well, I'm an optimist, so my clients pay me to be an optimist. So, so I've got to give an optimistic view. But I think, agencies, I've been working in advertising agencies since, 95, and there's always been something that's come along that's challenged the model or challenged the way that brands and consumers interact, et cetera, et cetera. I just think that there's a lot of smart people working in this industry, and we'll figure a way of working it out. But I think the key thing is to remain really flexible, to not be afraid of making mistakes, so that whole fast failure mentality, and just really keep and embrace change, and see it as a continual thing, not as a one-off.
That's really funny you say embrace change. I really have 3 values: deliver wow, share the love, embrace change. And I always say embrace change is a bit aspirational because human nature isn't always ready to embrace change. But it's so important. It's the agile programming, the executive programming mantra as well. I think the HR director or chief people officer, call them what you will, they are on the front line, and they have the power to change your organisation by the way they hire, the people they hire, the way they help to structure an organisation, break down silos, and enable collaborative working. Although you could say the same about the CFO, because he or she can do the same thing, thinking about how you do pricing structures and how you work more collaboratively and come up with new pricing models that would work in an age of collaboration. But I do think the opportunity is massive because business can be more purpose-led than ever before. That is being driven by the marketing function. So where there is opportunity there, I think it's really, really exciting. But it will only happen if we can genuinely collaborate with each other and listen to what our HR teams are telling us.
Thank you. And wisdom from the youth.
Yeah. So I'm going to agree with the point that Mars said about creating a fail fast culture, except I'd change fail fast for learn fast. So failure is only good if you learn something from it, and this idea of being able to try lots of things out and learn from them is probably the most important thing. I'm going to try and end by remembering a quote by a guy called Gary Hamel, who is a fantastic management thinker. And he talks about competitive advantage is no good at a single point in time, but your ongoing opportunity to have an evolutionary competitive advantage is what's most important. And so I think about the younger people in your organisations and how you can skill them up faster, maybe let them go on to comments, but also give them autonomy and opportunity to grow and lead things more so, because they are, I'm in my early 30s rather than late 20s, but I feel like I'm out of touch with how people use technology. So there's people that are grown, that are born, immediately they're familiar with touching and swiping, etc., and they're going to think and act very differently. So I think, give the reins to some younger people in your organisations once in a while.
So, thank you. Fantastic way to end. Thank you all for your contributions and for coming this evening rather than going out and playing in the sunshine. Thank you. Thank you.